Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in, and in this video we're going to talk about something very important. As a matter of fact, I would say this is one of those important videos that made me even start this channel, become an activist, and kind of echo my voice about the problems that exist within the immigrant community. And specifically, we're talking about immigrant students. And it's really nothing more than this main question that why don't we see these immigrants, these people who are getting often better than average grades, often are top performers in classes, and based on the statistics and everything else, why aren't they in a position of leadership or applying for the positions of leaderships in these different clubs and these different organizations? And why don't we see them? Because they're very well qualified. And I was definitely in one of those categories until I would say the last year of my undergrad, where I was in UC Berkeley. And finally, I was like, I want to break this stigma. I want to kind of take that step that nobody else does as an immigrant and get involved with my community and use these resources that exist in order to practice this advocacy, this fighting for justice. Where I'm gonna do it in future as a lawyer, let's do it right now. Let's research, let's dig up deeper, let's talk about these problems. And so I want to say that it has a lot of roots into different things for immigrant students. And it's so funny because I started a campaign of ESL accommodations campaign in UC Berkeley, where I was basically requesting for some of the accommodations, accommodations that these disabled students will receive for immigrant students because they need them. And of course, we were talking about like how one is qualified or not, especially nowadays that everybody wants to claim that they are from an immigrant background. And when I went from one class to another, or from one organization to another, talking to these leaders, talking to these professors, talking to these students, one thing was common among them. And it was that every single one of them would get the point, notice the point, and they were very much uneducated about it because they were often on the privileged side. And I was like, so this is something that some people felt, know that it exists, yet there's not so much voice out there about it. And unfortunately, because we don't have a specific organization for immigrants, for their problems, I had to use these different routes that existed by getting involved into or within other minority organizations in order to talk about this stuff as well, or bring them on the picture. Alright, so I assume a lot of people will be interested to see what is the answer to that question and what are the roots, and where they come from. So I would say one of them is language. It's the fact that when you move to a different country, especially if we're talking about those kids who moved here when they were in at the later ages, when they were at the end of their high school, like maybe junior year, senior year. Those who moved here when they had to start college, so they immediately started community college. Or those who moved in later on in their lives, when they were married, when they were 26, 27, 30 years old, and started community college. Those people often come from different backgrounds, but that means that they're dressing differently in majority of cases. They have a different accent or a very unusual accent to majority of people, and they look a little bit different. All of those characteristics are fantastic, but that also means that it automatically will bring certain attention to you as this outsider, as this different and unique individual. And not all of us would want those attention. And as a matter of fact, not all of us would want all of those attentions at all time. Because as an extrovert, I was able to handle those attentions. But at a certain point, it was just too much. At a certain point, it just made me uncomfortable. And it was to the point that in certain classes at UC Berkeley, I knew that people will respect me as an immigrant student. I knew that I had a place there of, at least we could say, a little bit of more understanding people towards immigrants, towards them having an accent and everything else. But I did not want to open my mouth, share my opinions and everything else. Because I had an accent, because it was different. And the teachers didn't care. In 99% of the cases. They were like, it's part of the participation point. You need to open your mouth and echo your voice. And I was like, but I'm struggling with it. And they were like, yes, we very much understand. But I was like, okay, so is there any alternative routes? And this should be a video, by the way, for itself. But let's just dig into it a little bit deeper and then we move on to the next reason. What are the alternatives that you would offer me in order to gain those points and kind of be at an equivalent place as another student? And there was never none. Like nothing on the table that I could do in order to make up for those points. And they were like, oh yeah, we understand completely that it's a problem for immigrants, but yeah, I think it's the best way for you to open your mouth. And it caused me to get a B- in one of my classes and not perform very well or always be anxious in class. Because I was like, when is the right time to open my mouth? When is it not? And again, I'm an extrovert. Just imagine we're talking about somebody who has anxiety, somebody who is stressed, somebody who is introvert and is not feeling comfortable talking about. That means they automatically will lose the point. That means they automatically will never want to open their mouth. Leave alone the fact that in majority of cases they will receive a lot of attention because of their accent. So I would argue one of them is that attention. Because again, coming from these different backgrounds, you dress up differently, you have that accent, you look a little bit different and everything else. Now the second factor is the information. And that was a huge problem for me. And that's the reason I have this YouTube channel, hoping to reach a lot more immigrants who move here, planning to move here. And by here, I mean the US, or their parents watching these videos that can educate themselves and their kids about what's out there. Because in majority of cases, especially if we're talking about a refugee like me, who moves here without their family members going to college or have done it, you have to experience them and find them yourself. And in majority of cases, dealing with the language alone, all these new stuff, that already eliminates a lot of chances from you going out there or having the time to do the research and find out about these different opportunities that exist. And by opportunity, I mean as little as such a club exists that you can participate in it. And later on, potentially after 1 or 2 semesters, you become a president or become a spokesman for that club. So information is the second factor. And it's very much underrated. Very much underrated as a problem. Okay? Because a lot of people think like, oh, but this website exists. You could have always looked it up. Yeah, but how the hell would I know that such a thing even existed to look it up, to go after it? But yet you will see those who were born here, they automatically have this information. Because their parents went to classes or these colleges and everything else. And they know that there was like a, organization for this, for that, a club for this, for that. You can become a student body president. Such a thing even exists. We don't have it. And again, that's a problem that a lot of people don't understand it. Even those who are nowadays claiming to be an immigrant or from immigrant background because they want all the benefits that goes with it, you know, putting them in that minority category, yet they don't really understand what I'm talking about. Perhaps their parents do, who migrated here as a first generation, but they don't. Because they were born here in all these like lower classes, middle school, high school, elementary school. They've been educated with this stuff. That counselors are available in every one of these institutions for specifically for your major. And you can go to them. I literally in high school, I was like, what the hell is a counselor? We never had one from where I come from. So information, accent, and this English portion that we just talked about, the accent factor of it as a factor 1, and then we talked about 2. Let's talk about to that English portion as factor 3. Because it's very important that a lot of immigrant students, including myself, especially when we go to these higher ranking colleges like UC Berkeley, when we are required to read all these papers, in majority of cases, we have hard time understanding the arguments. We have hard time reading and understanding these, what do we call them? These articles that are like, for classes, because you cannot just read them like you read a book. You have to have a certain perspective and just like go after the main argument and finish them. But we can't do them because we don't have as much knowledge or as much familiarity with the word, with the topic, versus somebody who was born here, who at least have heard that one word that they're reading in the paragraph at least once in their life. Or if they didn't, they have heard this very common topic or talked about it in their high school, in their middle school, in their elementary school, at least once. So they know where it's going. Versus us, we come from a different background, completely, for majority of us, eliminate the K-12 education, and then now we're in colleges. And so we have to put 2 to 3 times as somebody who was born here in order to get that article, in order to turn in our homework, in order to write our paper. Why that factor is not even in the game. And that was the reason that I was fighting for having more times in tests for immigrant students, because they have to do the translation, because they have to basically put it in the order that an American institution would want you to write it in that format, or that class wants you to write it in that format. All of those are not an automatic adjustment for majority of immigrant students, and they take time in their head. They have to burn extra energy. Yet when I communicated that with teachers who would give me the same time as everybody else, they didn't understand it. They're like, oh, yes, we understand you, but there was this one student from China who also turn in his papers on time as any other people who were born here in this class. And guess what? They got an average grade or even above average grade. So I don't think you should really complain. Really. Let's talk about their backgrounds. Did they go to international schools? Did they come from a wealthy background? Who've been educated over and over through the years with all these like teachers and tutors and everything else about the English language? Or did they literally move here like me as a refugee who didn't know how to speak any words? Do we come from the same background? Should we be treated similarly? So these are 3 of the main factors. And again, there was a lot more to say about the third factor, about the second factor, about the first factor. I think they require their own videos. But let's just cut them for the sake of this video to where we already have gotten deep information-wise or analytical-wise. And just say that from an information perspective, from an accent, receiving that attention, from this extra time that we have to dedicate in order to take care of our homeworks, take care of our school works, take care of our even jobs, that if we're talking about that, or bring that into the picture as well, because there are different clubs within certain jobs. We often have less time to go out to look up those different organizations or even think about participating in them. So it is only fair to bring that into the picture as well. Nevertheless, these are the problems. But us, immigrants, need to speak out. And if this video has taught you anything, is that no matter how you look, what you dress, or how you speak, you have to echo your voice. Because this country needs it. Especially when it comes to these matters. Especially when it's reasonable. Thank you for watching, and until the next video, peace.